the telepathic aliens who couldn't handle human chaos. The medical ship Hippocrates drifted through the void like a white beacon against the star-scattered darkness, her hull gleaming with the soft blue glow of medical bay viewports. Dr. Rachel Kim pressed her palm against the cool transparasteel of the observation deck, watching distant nebulae swirl in impossible colors that no human eye was meant to witness. Yet here they were, 300 light-years from Earth, carrying hope and healing to the farthest reaches of known space. "Another quiet shift," she murmured, though experience had taught her never to say such things aloud. The universe had a twisted sense of humor about tempting fate. The ship's intercom crackled to life, as if summoned by her thoughts. "Dr. Kim to the bridge. Priority Alpha distress signal incoming." Rachel's stomach clenched. Priority Alpha meant imminent loss of life, the kind of emergency that turned routine medical missions into desperate races against time and physics. She sprinted through the corridors, her footsteps echoing off the pristine walls adorned with the medical corps motto, "Where there is life, there is hope." Captain Alex Rivera stood rigid at the command console, his weathered face illuminated by the amber glow of tactical displays. 20 years of deep space service had carved lines around his dark eyes, but they still held the fierce determination that made him legendary among the medical fleet. "What's our situation, Captain?" Rachel asked, sliding into her station beside the command chair. "Distress beacon from an unknown vessel configuration," Rivera replied, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "Multiple ships, approximately 40,000 kilometers off our starboard bow. Life signs are unusual." The main viewscreen shimmered, revealing a cluster of vessels that defied every principle of human engineering. They resembled enormous jellyfish floating through space, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that shifted like living aurora. Delicate tendrils, each hundreds of meters long, drifted from their bell-shaped hulls in graceful undulations. "My God," Rachel breathed, "they're beautiful." "And dying," Rivera added grimly. "Their distress signal is broadcasting on multiple frequencies, universal medical emergency codes." Rachel studied the bio-readings scrolling across her screen. The alien physiology was unlike anything in the xenobiology databases, complex neural networks distributed throughout their entire bodies, with electromagnetic signatures that suggested advanced telepathic capabilities. "Captain, I'm reading massive neural trauma across their fleet," she reported. "Whatever happened to them, it's affecting their entire nervous system." Rivera's jaw tightened. The Hippocratic oath didn't distinguish between human and alien suffering. "Set intercept course, maximum burn." The Hippocrates surged forward, her engines painting space with brilliant blue fire. As they approached the alien fleet, Rachel felt an odd tingling at the base of her skull, a sensation like whispers just beyond the edge of hearing. "Captain," Communications Officer Torres called out, "we're receiving a transmission. It's directly in my head." Rivera and Rachel exchanged glances. First contact protocols had prepared them for many scenarios, but telepathic communication wasn't among the common ones. "Put it through the neural interface," Rivera ordered. "Ship-wide broadcast." The bridge filled with a voice that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere, melodious, alien, yet somehow achingly familiar. "Greetings, small-minded ones. We are the Zeph'yrian children of the deep void. We require assistance." The voice carried undertones of pain and desperation that transcended species barriers. Rachel felt her medical training kick in, overriding her amazement at this historic moment. "This is Dr. Rachel Kim of the medical vessel Hippocrates," she said aloud, hoping their telepathy worked both ways. "We're here to help. What's your medical emergency?" A pause filled with what felt like whispered consultations in an alien language that bypassed the ears entirely. Then, "Our mind weavers have been damaged. A feeding attempt went catastrophically wrong. We have never encountered such chaos. Rivera leaned forward. Feeding attempt? What kind of feeding? Memory sustenance, of course. We consume the ordered thoughts of lesser species to maintain our neural matrices. It is the way of things. We provide aid, and in return we harvest memory patterns for sustenance. But the species we encountered, their minds were like storms, chaotic, violent. Our mind weavers were overwhelmed. Rachel's blood chilled. Memory harvesting. They were talking about feeding unconscious thought, treating sapient beings like cattle. But her medical oath was clear. She would treat any patient, regardless of their past actions. "We need to board your vessel to assess the damage," she said. "Can you provide safe passage?" Yes, but be warned, our mind weavers may attempt to feed reflexively. It is their nature when injured. Your thoughts will be sampled." Rivera's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm. "Dr. Kim, I don't like this." "Neither do I, Captain, but they're dying." Rachel met his gaze steadily. "And we're the only medical ship in this sector." 20 minutes later, Rachel floated through the alien vessel's corridors in her environmental suit, marveling at the organic architecture that seemed grown rather than built. Bioluminescent panels provided soft, shifting light, and the walls pulsed with a rhythm that reminded her disturbingly of a heartbeat. Her escort was a Zeph'yrian who had introduced himself as Mindweaver Thecnol. In person, he was even more magnificent than the ship's external sensors had suggested, a graceful being of translucent flesh and flowing tendrils. His body shot through with networks of glowing neural pathways. His thoughts touched hers with the delicacy of silk. "The injured are this way, Dr. Kim. I must warn you, they are in great pain. Their telepathic screams may be disturbing to your primitive neural structure." Rachel bristled at the casual dismissal, but kept her professional composure. "I've dealt with severe neurological trauma before. What exactly happened during this feeding attempt?" "We encountered a species that called themselves Vorthen, I believe. Bipedal like yourselves, but with neural patterns unlike any we had experienced. When our mind weavers attempted to harvest their memory patterns, the feedback was explosive." They entered a vast chamber filled with wounded Zeph'yrians floating in specialized healing pools. The sight was heartbreaking, beings of ethereal beauty writhing in obvious agony, their bioluminescent patterns flickering erratically like damaged circuits. Rachel activated her medical scanner, studying the readings with growing amazement. The Zeph'yrian nervous system was a masterpiece of biological engineering, elegant, efficient, perfectly ordered. But that perfection had become a vulnerability. "Thecnol," she said slowly, "your neural architecture is incredibly refined, streamlined, but that means you're not equipped to handle chaotic input, doesn't it? Chaos is inefficiency, disorder. We have evolved beyond such primitive neural noise." His mental voice carried a note of pride that was almost childlike. Rachel nodded, understanding beginning to dawn. "The Vorthen, their minds must have been chaotic compared to yours. When your mind weavers tried to feed, they got overwhelmed by the sheer disorder of alien thought patterns." "Precisely. The experience was traumatic. Several of our finest mind weavers remain catatonic." As Rachel worked, using her medical knowledge to devise treatments for alien physiology, she became aware of a subtle probing at the edges of her consciousness. Thecnol was sampling her thoughts. She realized, not aggressively, but with the casual assumption that her mind was his to explore. "Stop," she said firmly. "I do not understand. I am merely tasting your memory patterns. It is natural, like breathing." "Not for humans, it isn't. Our thoughts are private." "How curious. Your species maintains such rigid barriers around your consciousness, so much energy wasted on, what do you call it, privacy." Rachel felt a flash of irritation and immediately sensed Thecnol recoil slightly. Her emotional response had apparently been sharper than he expected. "Your anger is Intense, chaotic like the Vorthen, but different, more layered. Human emotions are complex, Rachel replied, focusing on her work while keeping part of her attention on the alien's mental probing. We don't think in straight lines like you do. Indeed, your neural patterns are most peculiar, contradictory thoughts existing simultaneously, emotional responses that seem to serve no logical purpose. How do you function with such disorder in your minds? Rachel paused in her treatment of a particularly badly injured Zeph'yrian. Maybe that's exactly how we function. Maybe chaos isn't a bug, it's a feature. Impossible. Efficiency requires order. Logic demands structure. Does it? Rachel challenged. Your perfectly ordered minds couldn't handle the Vorthen, but humans deal with chaos every day. We thrive on it. She could feel Thecnol's confusion, his inability to comprehend how disorder could be strength. His mental touch became more insistent, probing deeper into her consciousness as he sought to understand. And that's when Rachel's mind fought back. It wasn't intentional. She had no telepathic abilities of her own. But the human brain, shaped by millions of years of evolution, had developed its own defenses against mental intrusion. As Thecnol pressed deeper into her consciousness, he encountered the full chaotic storm of human thought. Rachel's mind was a hurricane of contradictions. She was simultaneously confident and insecure, compassionate and frustrated, focused on her medical work while worrying about her sister's wedding next month, annoyed by Thecnol's assumptions while fascinated by his alien perspective. Memories cascaded in nonlinear patterns, childhood fears mixing with professional achievements, random song lyrics intertwining with complex medical procedures. Thecnol's mental scream was audible even to non-telepaths. He reeled backward, his bioluminescent patterns flashing in distress as the chaotic feedback overloaded his refined neural pathways. What are you? He gasped, his mental voice fractured and confused. Your mind is like a storm. How do you contain such chaos? We don't contain it, Rachel said, steadying him as he swayed. We surf it. The commotion had attracted other Zeph'yrians, including several mind weavers who had been observing from a distance. Rachel could feel their collective attention focusing on her, their telepathic senses probing cautiously at the edges of her consciousness. Fascinating, one of them whispered. Her neural patterns are completely unpredictable, random, yet she maintains coherent thought and purpose. It's like trying to drink from a waterfall, another added. The information flow is too chaotic to process safely. Captain Rivera's voice crackled through Rachel's comm unit. Dr. Kim, we're reading some unusual energy signatures from your location. Everything all right? Fine, Captain, she replied, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. I think we've just made a significant discovery about human Zeph'yrian neural compatibility. Over the next several hours, as Rachel worked to treat the injured aliens, she became the subject of intense but cautious study. The Zeph'yrians were fascinated by her chaotic thought patterns, but none dared attempt the kind of deep mental probe that had overwhelmed Thecnol. We have fed upon the memories of 47 different species, Thecnol explained as Rachel applied a neural stabilizer to one of the catatonic mind weavers. All possessed orderly thought patterns, logical progression from premise to conclusion. Even their emotions followed predictable pathways. Sounds boring, Rachel commented, adjusting the device's settings based on the alien's unique physiology. Efficient, elegant. We assumed all sapient species would share similar neural architecture. The Vorthen were our first encounter with truly chaotic minds, and the experience nearly destroyed our finest mind weavers. What happened to the Vorthen? Rachel asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. They did not survive the encounter. The feedback that damaged our mind weavers also caused catastrophic neural trauma in their species. We had not realized that chaotic minds could be so fragile. Rachel felt a chill of horror. An entire species, dead because the Zeph'yrians had tried to feed on their memories. She forced herself to maintain professional composure, but her emotional response must have leaked through her mental barriers because Thecnol recoiled slightly. "Your anger burns like acid," he observed. "So intense yet controlled. You maintain function despite emotional chaos. How is this possible?" "Practice," Rachel said grimly. "Humans have been dealing with conflicting emotions and chaotic thoughts for our entire evolutionary history. We've learned to function despite the noise in our heads." "Or perhaps because of it," suggested another mind weaver who had been listening. "Your chaotic neural patterns may serve as a natural defense against telepathic intrusion. We cannot safely feed upon minds that would damage us in the process." The implications were staggering. Humanity's mental chaos, the very thing that philosophers and scientists had long considered a flaw in human nature, might actually be an evolutionary advantage in a universe filled with telepathic predators. "Thecnol," Rachel said carefully, "have you ever encountered a species that could resist your memory harvesting?" "Never until now. Your minds are like trying to grasp lightning. Beautiful, powerful, but impossible to contain safely." Rachel finished her work on the last injured mind weaver and stepped back to survey the results. Her treatments had been largely successful. The alien's natural healing abilities were remarkable once their neural trauma was properly addressed. "You have saved many lives today, Dr. Kim," Thecnol said, his mental voice carrying genuine gratitude. "We are in your debt." "Just doing my job," Rachel replied. "Though I have to ask, will you continue memory harvesting from other species?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Rachel could feel the collective attention of every Zeph'yrian in the chamber focusing on her, their thoughts swirling in patterns too complex for her to follow. "We must feed," Thecnol said finally. "It is our nature, but perhaps we have been too casual in our assumptions about other minds. The Vorthan tragedy has taught us that not all species are suitable for memory sustenance. And your species has taught us that some minds are too dangerous to touch at all," added another mind weaver. "Your chaotic neural patterns would be like poison to us." Rachel felt a grim satisfaction. Humanity's mental chaos might not protect other species, but it would certainly protect humans from becoming Zeph'yrian cattle. "There's something else you should consider," she said. "If human minds are too chaotic for you to safely harvest, what does that say about the nature of consciousness itself? Maybe chaos isn't a flaw, maybe it's a feature of truly advanced intelligence." The Zeph'yrians exchanged rapid telepathic communications, their bioluminescent patterns flickering in complex sequences. Rachel caught fragments of their discussion, concepts that her human mind could barely grasp, debates about the nature of consciousness, and the relationship between order and intelligence. "You suggest that chaos and intelligence are linked?" Thecnol asked finally. "I'm suggesting that maybe your perfectly ordered minds aren't the pinnacle of evolution you think they are," Rachel replied. "Maybe they're just one path among many. And maybe the species you've been feeding on weren't lesser beings, maybe they were just different." The silence that followed was profound. Rachel could feel the weight of centuries of Zeph'yrian assumptions being challenged, their entire worldview shifting like tectonic plates. "If this is true," one of the mind weavers whispered, "then we have committed great wrongs, the species we have harvested. They were not cattle. They were equals with their own forms of consciousness." "The Vorthan," Thecnol added, his mental voice heavy with what Rachel recognized as grief. "They died because we could not comprehend that their chaotic minds were not inferior, merely incompatible with our feeding methods." Rachel felt a moment of sympathy for these alien beings, grappling with the realization that their entire civilization might be built on a foundation of genocide. But her sympathy was tempered by the memory of the Vorthan and countless other species who had died to feed Zeph'yrian hunger. "What will you do now?" she asked. "We must," reconsider, reevaluate, perhaps seek new forms of sustenance that do not require the consumption of sapient thought. Thecnol's patterns dimmed with exhaustion. It will not be easy. Our entire society is built around memory harvesting. Change never is easy, Rachel said, but it's necessary for growth. Captain Rivera's voice crackled through her comm again. Dr. Kim, we're receiving multiple distress signals from across the sector. Looks like we have more work to do. Rachel sighed. The universe's twisted sense of humor was at it again. No sooner had they resolved one crisis than another demanded their attention. Go, Thecnol said, sensing her conflict. Your healing gift is needed elsewhere. We will adapt, learn, perhaps find new ways to exist that do not require the suffering of others. As Rachel prepared to leave the Zeph'yrian vessel, she felt a gentle touch at the edge of her consciousness, not invasive like before, but respectful, almost reverent. Thank you, Dr. Rachel Kim, Thecnol's voice whispered in her mind. You have given us more than medical treatment. You have given us a new understanding of what it means to be truly intelligent. Your chaotic mind has taught us that order is not the only path to wisdom. And your perfectly ordered thoughts have taught me that maybe our chaos isn't something to be ashamed of, Rachel replied. Maybe it's something to be proud of. Back aboard the Hippocrates, Rachel found Captain Rivera waiting for her in the medical bay, his expression thoughtful. Interesting first contact, he said. The xenobiology department is going to have a field day with your reports. It was more than first contact, Captain, Rachel said, settling into her chair with a weary sigh. It was a revelation. We always assumed that human mental chaos was a weakness, all that noise in our heads, the contradictory thoughts, the emotional turbulence. But it turns out that chaos might be our greatest strength. Rivera raised an eyebrow. How so? The Zeph'yrians have been memory harvesting from dozens of species for centuries, treating them like cattle because their ordered minds were easy to feed upon. But human minds, we're too chaotic for them to safely touch. Our mental noise is like a natural defense system against telepathic predators. So our scattered thoughts and emotional chaos actually protect us. More than that, Rachel said, her excitement growing as the implications became clear. It suggests that consciousness itself might be fundamentally chaotic, that the noise in our heads isn't a bug, it's the feature that makes us truly intelligent. Rivera was quiet for a moment, processing this. And the Zeph'yrians, what happens to them now? They're going to have to change. Their entire civilization is built on memory harvesting, but they can't continue now that they understand what they've been doing. They'll have to find new ways to survive, new forms of sustenance that don't require feeding on sapient thought. Think they'll succeed? Rachel considered this. The Zeph'yrians were ancient, powerful, set in their ways, but they were also intelligent, and intelligence, even perfectly ordered intelligence, could adapt when faced with necessity. I think they will, she said finally. They're not evil, just limited by their own perfection. Sometimes it takes chaos to break through the barriers that order creates. As the Hippocrates set course for their next emergency, Rachel found herself thinking about the nature of consciousness and intelligence. Humanity had always been embarrassed by their mental chaos. The way human thoughts jumped from topic to topic, the way emotions colored every decision, the way contradictory ideas could exist simultaneously in the same mind. But maybe that chaos was exactly what made humans special. Maybe the noise in their heads wasn't a flaw to be corrected, but a feature to be celebrated. In a universe full of telepathic predators and perfectly ordered minds, humanity's beautiful, chaotic consciousness might be their greatest evolutionary advantage. The stars wheeled past the viewports, and somewhere among them, the Zeph'yrians were beginning the long, difficult process of reinventing their entire civilization. They would struggle, Rachel knew. Change was never easy, especially for beings who had believed themselves perfect. But they would adapt, because intelligence, whether chaotic or ordered, always found a way to survive. And perhaps, in learning to respect the chaos of human consciousness, they would discover new forms of beauty in the disorder of the universe itself. The medical ship Hippocrates flew on through the void, carrying its crew of beautifully chaotic humans toward whatever crisis awaited them next. And in the depths of space, the first seeds of a new understanding between species began to take root, an understanding built not on the consumption of consciousness, but on the celebration of its infinite, chaotic diversity. In the end, Rachel reflected, it wasn't humanity's order that made them special. It was their magnificent, beautiful, utterly chaotic ability to think 17 different thoughts at once and somehow make it all work. And in a universe full of predators who fed on orderly minds, that chaos might just be the thing that kept humanity free. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more journeys. Share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for the next adventure.